Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another exciting episode of the Disruptive Leadership Podcast, where you know that we challenge the status quo to help you multiply your impact, income, and influence. I'm your host, Jay Jackson. And today's guest, he is someone who, I would say, he just doesn't think outside the box. I think he actually blow the whole damn thing up today. At least that's what I'm hoping for. That's what I'm asking for, right? But his name is Jason Kanigan, and I hope I pronounced that properly. Yep. He's a business strategist and operations expert, which we are going to jam about today, who isn't here to just sugarcoat the truth, right? He's built his reputation by exposing the bad advice that keeps businesses stuck, but then also challenging some mainstream narratives around business and showing us as leaders how to actually create sustainable success. So you guys know, this is in my wheelhouse. I'm all over it. Right? But if you have ever been told to just follow best practices, scale as fast as possible, or fire your bad clients just to fix your business, yeah. Jason's about to show you why that is all wrong. All right. So let's jump over into this conversation. Jason, how you doing today, man?
Yeah, thanks, Jay. I appreciate the chance to be on, and yeah, I look forward to a great conversation. That's all I really want out of these things, and I know it's not going to disappoint.
No, I don't believe it is either. Because even something just not the whole conversation, but a little bit that just touched on behind the scenes is just the importance of us having these conversations. Mm-hmm. Because otherwise, we kind of stuck in our little group thing or a little mind about doing things. And so sometimes we got to come in and shake some things up. So everybody in the industry, at least those that I'm paying attention to, and I won't say everybody, but there are a few folks. They love talking about it's about rapid scaling, and I can get you to 7 figures or $10 million, in 12 months, or if you just do this, right? But you have this thing it's called Blitzscaling, right? And you say it's useless for most companies. What's the real reason scaling too fast can be a death sentence for?
Right. Yeah, Blitzscaling is a book by I think Reid Hoffman, one of the guys who founded LinkedIn. And I got notes on a big screen over here, which provides a lot of light, and I got 3 other lights here. But so you'll see me look over here because I want to make sure I hit everything. So I read the book, then I read all the reviews on Amazon, and then I compared them, and I wrote all this stuff down. This is excellent pain point language for high-level businesses, right? Okay. So I compared them to other books like Scaling Up, Good to Great, Traction, okay? And I came to the conclusion that nearly all of the reviews of Blitzscaling showed me they were written by drive-by tourists. We're oh, look, it's the land of Blitzscaling. Okay. And the reason is these people were not CEOs or founders. So first of all, it was unlikely they had any practical experience at all by which to measure the usefulness of the content in the book. All right. So they're reading it as a fun fairy tale, a fable, right? Or an interesting vacation spot. Oh yeah, it'd be fun to go to the Mexican Riviera, have a few drinks, and fly home, right? And that's the way they're reading the book to do it, And so here are some reasons why. Most businesses don't have the business model to do blitzscaling. Okay, so we're thinking of Airbnb here or something like that. When that first came out, there were competitors to it, and what the founders did was they got money and they poured money into opening up branches, local branches everywhere they could, right? And there's a Civil War general, get there firstest with the mostest, right? It was his slogan, and that's what they were doing. And so they would outflank their opponents in the business game by pouring money into this business model and getting there locally before anybody else could put in a toehold, and therefore they got the listings, right? And that's how Airbnb built their business. Now, for most of us, I'm in the space and defense field. There's a lot of people who expect venture capital in there because they invented something cool. They're give me $200 million for something cool. And you ask them Jay, who's your customer for this? Oh,
No clue.
Jason says, get a customer, right? I've been through that conversation so many times and had venture capitalists on my show, the Cold Star Project, to talk about that. So despite what your college coursework may have told you, right, that hockey stick curve may not be the model. It probably isn't the model for your business growth. So that just didn't make any sense. So brick and mortar businesses, generally speaking, don't have a hockey stick curve, and they don't qualify to run that blitzscaling thing. So if you read the book, just take note, right? Unless you have a huge pool of money and that hockey stick growth curve, like it's a universal appeal kind of thing, right? Like McDonald's maybe could do it, appear everywhere, the same burger in Thailand as in France, right? Then you can do it, right? But for most of us, it's just not possible.
Yeah, well, I think, so for those in the online space, because I love that you brought up like brick and mortar and being in the defense space. Like for us in the online space, I know a lot of times, or in the brick and mortar space, we kind of need to have that distinction that, hey, this business model is only going to work in this particular environment. It's not
right.
Every environment. So what would you say is like one warning sign that a business is scaling too fast and maybe setting themselves up for failure?
So yeah, and they make a point of this in the book, actually, talking about moving bits, not atoms. So if you're moving a bit of information, yeah, you could probably scale that thing, right? A little 1 or 0, right? Electronic information. If you're moving atoms, like I got clients in the trucking industry, free, it's difficult. That's really, really challenging. So, we see, a lot in the software as a service field. They are really interested in customer acquisition. Now, a lot of them get a pool of money, and now it's a runway situation, right? Can we take off and make money before I run out of cash? And then they start thinking about the strategy. Like, it's way too late at that point, because what is the strategy? Is the strategy to monetize, or is the strategy to rapidly increase the user count and then turn around and sell this thing and exit, right? And a lot of them, I've talked to them, they have not thought about this. And so, yeah, if you're burning money acquiring customers, but the churn rate is so bad that they're lasting 3 months or less, you're going to die, right? That runway is just going to vaporize on you and you got nothing. You're not going to take off, right? So I would be watching for these kinds of signals, right? What does it cost to get a customer? What's the lifetime value? How long do they last? And then look at like, oh my gosh, like, is this sustainable? Or do we need to do emergency surgery on trying to, and then what is wrong? Is it the product that's wrong, right? Is it the message to market fit that's wrong? Are they using it to do something that we didn't expect? We see that a lot, right? That Dan Coe has got his cerebral thing, right? His second brain software, and he'll talk in his videos about, hey, we released this this feature, and the customer started using it in a way that I didn't even think of, right? So there's a lot of feedback, and I think feedback loops are critical in businesses. They're the most ignored, misunderstood, broken, forgotten thing, but you really ought to be thinking about feedback loops in any business, right? I do this, what happens, right? That plan, do, check, act sort of thing, right? That cycle.
Yeah, one SaaS company that comes to mind that I think did it really well, and I think they had this clarity from the very beginning, is ClickFunnels. They knew that there was going to be a mission or a cause,
right?
And they've been able to build, this community where churn rate, I don't know their interviews, but I'm super confident, right, that they're able to retain their customers.
They were for a long time, Jay, because Russell Brunson came out with his marketing books, right? And this is how to do it. And even I bought them. Right. I've been a copywriter for like 20 years at that point and made a lot of money and been in internet marketing for 5 or 6 at that point. But what he did with ClickFunnels was joined together under one banner a whole bunch of different things, right? Features and stuff that needed to be done in one program. Now, after a while, there was started to be alternatives, right? Go High Level does it very well. But, for folks who didn't want to go to 14 different places and wanted everything under one roof, yeah, it was great. It was great. And they built a lot into that culture. You're just one funnel away. They had the conventions, right? And then Russell went on to buy Dan Kennedy's stuff, right? So he aligned himself correctly with it's very senior marketer in the field, a guy who I've been following since the 90s, before they even had Glazer Kennedy. I've actually, a friend of mine is Nick Louisi, who was the past president of Glazer Kennedy. So I've been connected peripherally, at least, to that world for a long time.
You're
yeah. And we got the heads to prove it, right?
Yeah. So thinking about that, right? So thinking about how you have these industry leaders, like a name, Russell Brunson, there are different leaders across the industry, but once they basically kind of established that this is what we consider to be best practices, thinking that these are the keys to success, why do you think that that's one of the biggest mistakes that businesses make following the kind of that?
Yeah, and I want to get out of just the internet marketing lens here as well, and look at brick and mortar businesses as well, right? Yeah. And I've written a LinkedIn article about this. If you go connect with me on LinkedIn and go look at the articles I've written, it wasn't, it was last year or something, like it wasn't too long ago. There are some problems here with looking for best practices. What really happens is you turn your brain off because you're going hunting for somebody else's answer. Well, so now you've killed creativity. Right. You've abdicated your own sense of responsibility and what's right and wrong, right? And it puts you in this passive, time-wasting, waiting mode of waiting for some white knight to ride to the rescue, bop, 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 and the banner on the horse, and here it is, right? So the solution you find is probably not going to be the right fit for your organization. It might not be the right fit for your decision-making style. It might not be the right fit for your KPIs, and you're trying to jam this in. I've got my a little show that I just started called First Year Presidents. It's a short format show. I want first year presidents to come on, and I had Brett Linenkol on last week, and he's a business process improvement guy. So his company maps out processes and whatnot, right? And we were talking about it, company culture, and he says, you don't want to install a liver in the wrong place. And I'd never really thought about it before in quite that way, because the body could reject it, right? What's the blood type and this kind of thing. So you get this best practice that you pulled from some other company that's not the shape, size, temperature, blood type of your company. You try to shove it into yours. It's going to probably get rejected. So you don't always want to be looking outside. I'm not saying never look anywhere else and don't look outside the company, but don't assume that there's only one right way to do something, and just because it worked for these people in their situation automatically means it's going to work for you. So as an example, back to SaaS companies, so software as a service, I see them, they buy process template kits. They buy these things, right? Hundreds of processes. And they find generally they do very little with these things. They sit on their hard drive. Most of the templates don't apply. They need considerable customization. And so you get these template libraries that are just rotting away on hard drives. So just because somebody says, oh, it's a best practice, or you want to go look for best practices, don't assume that, well, I found something out there, I'll just apply it here. It's probably not going to work. Not to be negative Nancy.
Is that your same perspective when it comes to the franchise?
Yeah, so franchises are interesting. I was actually senior manager at a multi-billion, the number 521 that year in the Inc. Top 500 that year business. And so I got to work a lot with franchisors, franchisees. There's a lot of legal problems if you look into the history of Subway or mow the Southwestern Grill. I could talk for half an hour about legal issues of those things coming out of what might be seen as best practices. Subway used to tell their franchisees, you have to renovate every so many years, every 10 years or something like that. Don't hold me to that. But then they said, but when you do it, you have to use our approved contractor. And guess what they got from that approved contractor? A kickback to head office. Now that so the franchisees were not free to go out, pick their own contractor and plug them in, right? They had to follow the best practices of going to head office and using somebody that was approved, and then giving some of that money to head office in a roundabout way, right? So yeah, just you've got to be careful with franchises, especially. Again, I'm not saying there's no answers outside there, but don't just think you're going to blindly scoop it up. I've been a NASCAR fan for about 10 years now. I moved to the South from the West Coast to the South, and so kind of happened.
What part of the West Coast were you?
Oh, I was Vancouver, Canada. I was, originally Canadian, but been here 15 years and become part of the evil empire now. So if I had to go back, they would see me as tough and mean, and it's laughable because I'm not. But
you've got a little Americanized.
Yeah. So watching though, I'm on the board of advisors of the Operational Excellence Society, which is a nonprofit kind of thing that helps companies with Lean Six Sigma black belt certifications and that. We've got Corning, we've got like one of the U.S. Armed Forces as clients now. But I'm watching this NASCAR process, and they changed to stage racing around that time. And the first thing that really hits me is the pit crew. And I'm like, who mapped that out? Who mapped out that dance of Jason's going to go in there and pull the rivets off the tire or whatever, right? And then Ronnie's going to run in and switch out the tires, and Mary's going to take that away, and then Jay's going to run over with the fuel can plugged in. And like, there's a ballet here, right? And the OpEx guy in me is going crazy. And I asked around, and I never got an answer from any team or anybody who I was connected with. And I know some racers. They wouldn't tell me who wrote that thing. But I guarantee you can't go to Denny Hamlin's team and that crew chief in that year and pull that dance out and apply it to, I can't think of any of the names right now, but another driver, right? Another driver, yeah. Austin Dillon, let's say, right? You can't slap that into his system and expect it to just suddenly work.
So do you think that's because of the individual team members or some other cause? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Jay. Like, these individuals on these pit crews are chosen for certain abilities, right? And speed and inclinations and that. I don't think they're as just replaceable as you might think. Otherwise they wouldn't get paid, very much, which is grab another guy and stick him in there. It's probably hard to lift a very heavy fuel can and run over and plug it into a gas tank. And sometimes when you see an accident and the fuel's spilling out and stuff, it's very alarming. So I think culture has a huge, impact on it. Each team, each crew chief is going to impact that. And kind of how much they care as well. Like how much are they really, is each individual team member bought in to this system? Training, practice, how much do they do of that? All this happens off camera. We never see it. It's like NFL football teams. Right. You can probably go watch a practice, but not many people do that. They just wait for the game. And if the players were to wait for the game to practice, it'd be in big trouble.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like the NASCAR pit crew scenario is almost like picking a jockey, right? Like there's just for this role, you have to be a certain height, a certain weight, or a certain, I guess kind of stature, right?
Yeah.
So I love how and because I've done this, right, where you know what, this SOP it works perfectly fine. I've got a team member here who left for another opportunity, or whatever, had an illness in their family, they're no longer with us. But I'm thinking, because everything's been flowing so smooth, this SOP, let me just go hire someone and plug them in, and now things are not.
Right. There's more to it. Yeah.
So you brought up culture a couple seconds. So I want us to dive into that for a minute, because I like to consider myself to be a huge culture guy. Because I've been a part of, having been in the military, I've been a part of a culture that is it's unique. It's different. The camaraderie is unmatched in any other place that I and there's only a small percentage of people who have the pleasure to experience it. And so for those who may not, because you work in the defense contracting space, I'm sure you've been some things in terms of culture that probably either intrigued you or frustrated you or whatever. What's your take on the importance of culture, establishing a healthy culture, and its impact even?
Right. So first of all, Jay, I'd like to begin with, a lot of people want to just let this organically develop and leave it to last, and I believe that's the biggest mistake you can make, because what's going to happen is the Frankenstein monster is gonna come out here, and you're not going to be able to control it. You don't know what you're going to end up with, and just like the monster, it's probably going to turn on its creator. Right. A big result of culture is the choice of customer. Who am I going to work with? What will I put up with? How badly can they beat up on my people? Right? How rude can they be? Somebody like that's going to get ejected from my organization pretty quickly, right? So as a founder, if you stand for nothing, you fall for anything, right? Sure. So don't let any customer through the door. Have some clear values. I've got a dream, and I've had this vision for some time, for my company, Cold Star Technologies. And I don't know where this is, but I've been imagining this for many years. Just a picture that popped into my head of taking over like an abandoned mall or something like that. Like imagine 2 or 3 story high mall with the atrium, and it's open in the middle, and there's a pit, and then there's railings around the outside up 2 or 3 stories, and the big ceiling. And you got your offices on the side. Every day when people have to walk in, they're going to, and I used to run a metal fab shop, so I can do this. They're going to have to walk under an archway, and the letters, big ass metal letters, are going to spell out the truth. And that's my highest value. Gotcha. And that's often unpleasant, not great. I gotta swallow this. It sucks, right? But not being crazy about reality and looking away and going, oh, I'm not going to notice that. I've had clients who had cash-based businesses, and some employees were ripping them off. That the opportunity, like I've had it happen where there's a hallway with a door and a window and a cash register in there, and customers will come outside, and I'd come in through the back, and one person would literally block me at the door, smiling and engaging me in conversation, while person number 2 was pulling cash out of the register. Wow. To distract me, right, from seeing that. But I knew I've seen it before, what's happening, right? So and yet, this is the culture part, that business owner was unwilling to prosecute. They wouldn't fire this person. And it makes you wonder, right? It's like, oh, are they collaborating? Are they worried about what a deeper look will uncover? Right? So they didn't stay too long, right? So if you're a founder and you're only focusing on tech development, I've got this great book called What to Ask the Person in the Mirror. Okay. And the author points out, and he's got talks on YouTube and that, and this is culture. You should be talking about culture so many times that your employees begin to mock you. Like, oh, Jay's all about XYZ. Right? When you got it, you got it. You hear it, and you're like, yes, they got it. Because telling them once or telling them twice and going, well, I told them what I wanted in company culture, it isn't enough. It's not going to stick. But culture is, what do they do? What do your people do when you're not around to tell them? And so if you focus just on the tech stack as a founder and getting these SOPs and these process steps right, and I love these things, they're important, but if they don't know how to make a decision without you there, you're headed for disaster. There's going to be a real problem there, right? And to grow as a president and founder, you're going to find you have to back off from making decisions, right? Otherwise, you're going to slow everything down if everything has to go through you. And a lot of founders never get past this. They get this ego thing. They have to be central to every decision. And then you got to backtrack, right? So I worked with a big franchise company. Talk about this again. No one could make a serious decision there. And they would complain. There were 3 owners. The people, the office staff would complain to me and say, God, we're just drifting. We're drifting. And the operational tempo was very slow as a result. So guess what? People lost enthusiasm. One guy was playing World of Warcraft all day, and he was like the marketing guy.
Wow.
Yeah. You'd walk by and he'd do this and flip all tab, to try and get out of it. I'm like, who do you think you're fooling? And they never fired that guy. So
for me, man, I think that comes down to, like you said, the founder. That's leadership. Yeah. If you're not, as you said, if you're not standing for something, you'll fall for anything. If you're not modeling the values, and at least for me, that's what I found is, yes, we have to verbally send the message, but I think we have to be the message. And in being the message, right, your team begins to basically through osmosis, take on those characteristics and behaviors that you demonstrate. And then they are then able to transfer that over to your customer, right? And so, and I tell people, like, I have 2 teams, right? Or I have 2 customers, I'm sorry. I've got my internal customers, which is, of course, my external customers who pay the bills. But I have to make sure that my internal customer has everything that they need, right, to be successful in their role in order for my external customer to give us the money. And I think, like you said, that's leadership. And when you talk about a scenario where there were 3 different people making a decision, therefore no one was making a decision. A lot of times we know that you have someone, like you said, they're in the tech space, or they're a technician, part of the business because they're a technician. And now in order for the business to grow, they may need to figure out a way to slice up the pie or bring on investors or whomever so that they can be the technician that the business needs them to be, while everyone else operationally and executive can actually be the right butts in the right seat, taking traction, so that the company can actually grow, right? And not be that bottleneck. So, but I know a lot of this stuff we're talking about, like unhealthy cultures, things of that nature, how those things create conflict. And you've got a unique perspective where most people think, conflict is bad for business, but you actually say the opposite. Like, do you think that like high conflict business actually runs better? Why is that?
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't mean people like knife fighting in the alley, right? Out back of the building, but feeling free to share their opinion and share it strongly, right? It's fine. Like, once the decision is made, get in line, right? And let's implement. But I think, and you made me think a moment ago of a business I founded called The Closing Engine with a co-founder named Jeremy Pope some years ago. It was a closing as a service business, and he was very good at culture, and he said, Jason, we've got to create a way for our employees to hold our feet to the fire. Okay, now think about that in terms of conflict. Like, if they see us acting against our professed values, culture, right? How do they have some power to hold our feet to the fire? So, and you just made me think of that. I haven't thought about that in a long time, but so this perception is out there, but like, nobody publishes their biggest weakness on their website or their biggest problem. They all lie, including me. presenting everything as a nice, smooth, unified front, right? So unruffled surface of the water. And there's this perception that, of course, a quiet business is a happy business. Okay. The problem is, if people aren't passionate, are they involved? No. So, one of the values of Amazon is disagree and then commit. And some people had some trouble with that, understanding what it meant. It meant give your opinions. Once the decision's made, let's commit to this. But if people won't speak up, there's a reason. And that reason goes back to company culture, right? Which the founder is the big red lantern on, that always giving out, what is acceptable and what isn't. So if they're afraid, they're cowed, and then they may actually have no ideas because they've been browbeat so many times, right? So you have a culture and value problem there. And so I go back to that big franchise business, 40 territories and more. Good qualifying process, good onboarding process for new franchisees. But after that point, leadership was just perceived as drifting, right? What do we do? That? No direction, long periods of silence, right? Employees whispering about it. And I'll tell you what happened there, Jay. This is going back more than 10 years now. They lost the core of their management and customer service team, like their key 6 or 8 people, including me, within 6 months.
Wow.
And, how do you operate when you've lost all of that institutional knowledge, right? But they didn't feel, the owners didn't feel that way about it. They sold to a competitor. They got their big paydays. They got jobs running the business again. And I guess they felt that people were just replaceable hardware.
It happens, man. Having myself, like I said, one of the things I always want to know is who's willing to stay on, who will be the continuity. Because I think again, not to create a scenario. All the best practices have to remain in place, but I do think you have to have that core group who's going to sustain the business, because like you said, you lose those core folks, especially if fees, the processes, the vendors, especially because you got to think you might lose someone who had a relationship.
Yeah.
That vendor no longer wants to do business with the company because that relationship is.
Yeah.
So, I think a lot of that stuff have to be considered when you're doing your due diligence in terms of acquisitions or things like that. And I know that's not why we came here, but it came up in today's conversation.
Acquisitions are fascinating. Most of them fail. Most of them fail because of the culture thing. Yeah. Absorbing the new company into the existing one tends to fail. And I mean, look what's happening, right? You've got terrified employees, regardless of how much you try and reassure them. Right? Please do. But they're worried about layoffs. They're worried about redundancy, right? As the British say. Oh, I've already got a person doing that. We've already got an accounting back office in the existing company. I don't need you 5 guys anymore. Right? You're out of here. So they're terrified of that. They lost their boss, who they probably like as the leader of the old company, who's giving it up. And so where's their motivation, right? They're probably down in the dumps. So very, very scary situation in terms of acquisitions, and to be treated very lightly, very softly.
Yeah. You brought up motivation, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that when you talk about perverse incentives, right? Like what does that mean, and how can businesses actually, prevent it in their company, whether it's an acquisition or not?
Yeah. So I would call perverse incentives an advanced topic that most people, it just blows over their head. I first ran into it in a book called Cambodia, a book for people who find television too slow, written by a Vancouver native in the 80s. And it's written in a very weird style. The top 2/3 of the page are an essay on things like the Belgian Congo in the 1800s, where Heart of Darkness was written, which became Apocalypse Now. Very strange and horrible things happen there. And the bottom third is like that. Sorry, the top thirds are short vignettes about very odd things like One's called Universal Chicken, and this came out before McDonald's did chicken tenders, right? So you could drive anywhere, and it's become this way, right? You drive into a town, it's the same strip mall, the same restaurant chains, the same food. Where's the dented apple? That's what the author was asking about. But a perverse incentive is like a bad measure. It looks good in the short term or in short range vision, but as you apply it to decision making, it causes you to do more of these bad things that reduce your value, take things off course or whatever. So there was a social media company. I lived in Wilmington, North Carolina for 10 years on the coast. And this one, they did pretty well. They were a good PR firm, and they had a taco giveaway for this chain. For social media likes, and this is again like 2011 or something like that, right? We'll give you a taco if you give us a like. And I talked to the founders later. I used to go to a lot of networking events, and the guy kind of hangs his head, that the PR company owner, he says, "Yeah, we gave away a lot of tacos." Taco company went out of business. Okay, so they weren't generating customers by that. The horrible thing about the Belgian Congo was the perverse incentive there was bullets were expensive. So if a Belgian soldier went off in the woods and shot a rabbit or something like that, he either had to come back with the shell or a human hand. And this is true. They did horrible atrocity things. So a lot of people were walking around with stumps on the end of their hands, their arms, not because they did anything wrong, but because these Belgians had to account for this horrible thing. So we've seen this. There was a thing in the Veterans Administration that you can look up. I've written an article or two on my blog, salestactics.org. If you look up perverse incentives in there. There was a Soviet glass plant that made glass that was too thin and then too thick because they were trying to meet performance measures given to them, like quantities, right? But the glass was useless, right? So this is the idea of a perverse incentive. $200 million electrical wholesaler I worked for a long time ago. They would courier internal stock. There was like 22 branches in Western Canada, right? So they would courier this item overnight in an envelope. That would make the inventory spot in the other location open up, so they would reorder that. Then the person, the end customer, would say, "Nah, I don't want it," and they'd send it back. Imagine the costs piling up, right, of this expensive reorder point, inventory purchases. The end customer doesn't even want it. It's just money wasted. I did a project on this. And so it was just a money loser, right, at the time. So, and we've covered it already in the software as a service field. If you're a SaaS founder and you believe that more new customers is your best KPI, but you buy customers who don't stick, you're going to go out of business, right? That's a bad KPI. That's a perverse incentive, right? So, and I've got lots of examples of these. It's like boiling to death like the frog in the pot when you turn the temperature up a little bit at a time, right? Suddenly the frog's dead, and it's like, what happened? So, but these things, we need those feedback loops to check for perverse incentives and go, is this really helping? You see that, like, we've got the Veterans Administration thing, I think was, we've got to make the appointment times drop. Right. I want it 5 minutes or 10 minutes or something like that, instead of an actual session with a doctor for half an hour or something like that. So, it looks good, but quality of care ultimately decreases, right? So, yeah. And this is a government thing, So, yeah, go to salestactics.org, look up perverse incentives, and you'll see some wonderful examples there of these things. And like, they're in every business. I've actually got a podcast episode in the Gold Star Project about that, a solo one where I just talk about these things.
Nice.
Yeah, they're like a hidden little viper in your business.
Almost like a cancer, right? It's something that you're putting into the body, right? Mm-hmm. And you're thinking that it's going to be nutritious or it's going to taste good or feed you, but over time it begins to basically eat away at you.
Right.
eats away at your business. All right, so let's pivot then. Let's pivot. Like we've talked about a lot of things around what not to do. So let's start talking about like some of the high impact action to start fixing your operation. So what are some of those things that you think business owners can do?
Yeah. Clarity is the number one issue, right? What are we actually in? Right? I was talking with my client in the logistics field today, and they got, multi-million dollars in revenue, been around like 18 years, right? It's not a new business. And yet I was like, well, who's your best kind of customer? Who do you make the most money off of? We don't know. What business are we in? What should we be trying to get outreach going to get more of? Right? And again, this is a money-making operation. That's fine. Right? But they're not clear. And so if you're just a startup, a small business owner, right? I've got my business model generation book over there. And there's another great hardcover I should have brought in if I'd known I'd needed it. I had it here to hold up. But just getting clarity on like, who do we serve? Who's our best kind of customer? Who's the most profitable for us? Who can we have the biggest impact for, right? In my own business, I created something called internal business intelligence, which people can find out about if they go to coldstartech.com and look at the IBI page. And that came out of me asking myself for like 6 months, what's the highest, biggest level of impact that I can have for my clients? Well, my biggest impacts come from personal relationships with company presidents of a certain type and a certain size, right? They're not empowered yes men. They can change things right now, right? We hired Jason for doing this. There's no HR baloney, right? And this is what's happening now, right? And so thinking about that, who can I serve? What's the biggest impact? That will usually tell you what should I get good at, right? I got a friend named Paul Rolkins, who's a Dutch high performance culture expert. I've interviewed him a couple times for the Cold Star project, 3 times, I think. And one of them was like, okay, who are you working for and what are you doing? Just wanted to find out. His big thing is called strategic quitting. He has a TED talk on this, strategic quitting. And it's something that I need to return to myself, and every business should. What shouldn't we be doing, right? What should we be cutting? Because Peter Drucker said this, one of the great management science guys of the last century, lived into his 90s. The secret is to stop doing the millions of things that I'm getting close to the quote here, that don't need to really be done and won't be missed. And then you're free to focus on what we're actually doing here. I've seen a theory that a lot of jobs in the United States are created because of the need for government compliance. And so we're just basically hiring people as founders to cover our asses and follow the rules, right? Rather than actually do anything productive. And so that puts a strain on sales and revenue generation, right? Because we're paying to hold up these people who think they're doing an important job, and yet they're just shuffling papers. So getting that clarity on what's our highest, best impact, who could I do it best for, how can I cut out what I shouldn't be doing? And I'll tell you personally, this goes in cycles, and I got friends who are like this too. It's like, oh yeah, I could do that. Oh, I want to do that. I could do it. I want to do it. All right, I'm going to put it on the to-do list, right? I got these floating ideas lists all the time, right? And they got 16, 17 things on them. And then I'm exhausted because you can't do it. Yeah. And the horrible truth, the inconvenient truth, right? The truth that I was telling you about earlier rears its ugly head, and you're like, damn, I can do 2. And I got to slit the throat and drop the bodies to the floor of 14 of these suckers. And it hurts. It hurts, right? There's books I want to write. I just don't have time to do it. I got fantasy fiction ideas I've been writing. I've written over 50 short stories in my life. I got a book on geopolitics and negotiation. I've been floating around for like 5 years with that thing. I can't get to a purpose with it, like a point of like, this is what I'm going to do. And it just keeps getting kicked to the back seat. I've got a book on the business of space that's 90-something% done. It's written, it's edited. I've spent a lot of money on it. It's got a cover, almost ready to go. And that last little bit, I just can't get it done because it keeps getting cut to work on the two things that are really going to move the needle, right, in the business. So there's an indicator, right? What moves the needle? Revenue, impact. What do we see? What actions do we take? Because most of the stuff we do does nothing. And that's a scary, especially for guys who are like type A and want to show up and contribute. Give me the work. I'll grab it. I'll football tackle that thing. And but it's like most of it shouldn't be done. And I personally had to learn how to rest.
Yeah.
That was a big deal. Really rest between intellectual athletic activity. So I'll stop there. But if you got further questions, I'm happy.
No, you're good, man. I one or two, a couple more questions I want to kind of tap into, and I think I want to stay kind of orbit around this real quick because you talk about energy, you talk about burning out, and that's one of the things that I love most is avoiding that type of stuff because I had an episode where I passed out and then ended up in the hospital for 3 days with exhaustion and dehydration because I am that personality, right? Yeah. But getting clarity, right? So getting clarity on what type of business I wanted to operate, getting clarity on, the lifestyle that I wanted to live, how much money I wanted to make, like I say, who do I want to serve, what impact, do I want to lead? I think getting clarity on all of those things are super important. And then, for me, experience creating those systems, whether it be automated or manual, that someone else can do or the technology can do for you. At least for me, that has been the game changer and the lifesaver for me to be able to make that kind of impact and the money. And that's kind of what I'm talking about a little bit offline. But let's because you've had experience, whether corporate, executive level, middle management, I'm sure the technician level through when you were first entering into the workforce. So you've been able to kind of see like systemic issues that companies have had at every level. So like high stakes work like that can actually burn. So how do you personally protect like your energy so that like you can stay sharp and still be at peak performance?
Right. And again, I've had to learn it. Nobody told me. You pick stuff up along the way, and it probably takes. I've had other people tell me it takes like 8 years to get good at this stuff. So if you're struggling with it, don't feel bad. I actually wrote a short book called The Fast Path to Productivity for agency owners, but it's for any business owner, where I cover 6 things that I can get into here. 6 tools to use to get that sense of control back. So having worked with many CEOs, I've discovered one common point of view amongst them until I kind of slapped them around and straightened them out about it. They have this incorrect belief that, oh, Jay, if only I can just catch up on all the work that I've got right now and catch up, get to 0, I'll be all right.
Right.
And I'm like, no. See, here's the problem. You will never catch. There will always be more work.
For sure.
Yes. And until somebody realizes that, until a leader realizes that, they're at risk for what happened to you, right? Where I got a friend who runs the aerospace business in England, and he actually was the guy who ran a thing called Fylingdales, which was the missile defense facility for England, staffed by Brits, technology by America. So when it did this, so here's a guy who's used to hard work, right? And he posts on Facebook, I fell asleep looking at my phone. And I'm like, damn, brother, how did that happen to you? That wouldn't happen to me, right? and I've dated women who had this problem, right? Who just believe that, oh, I'm at the whim of my schedule. I'm at the whim of other people. And you have to learn how to say no. You have to learn to put up some boundaries, right? That's the first step there, realizing that the work will never end. So we have to choose. Again, values. What am I going to fight for? And what am I going to leave? Like, I'm not going to touch that. Oh, well, and I can delegate it or I can just ignore it. A lot of work doesn't need to be done. let's remember about that. So the first thing I recommend people do is I made a commitment to my Google Calendar probably around 2010 or so. It was pretty new. There were other calendar apps at the time. And the commitment I made was everything's going to go on my calendar. And when it says I'm going to do a thing, pretty much going to do it.
Yep.
I'm not saying I'm never going to punt that thing forward because that's happened, but into the future, if I could. But most of the time when a thing says take out the trash, guess what Jason's doing, right? And that takes a lot of cognitive load off because I'm looking at my calendar, the thing's in the right spot. We'll get to that in a minute. And I know what I'm going to do and why, and it matters. Okay. Second thing is, batch your tasks. So the first thing to do there is to monitor for at least 2 weeks. What am I doing? What am I doing? What are the tasks? Am I writing emails, making calls, doing technical work, doing quotes, managing clients, right? What am I doing? And realize that there's that cognitive thing again. If I switch from topic to topic, every time I do that and then try and go back, so I'm writing a thing and then I get a phone call and I allow that to interrupt and I take it, it's going to take me 10, 15 minutes to get back to the flow state that I was probably in the last task, right? Writing the thing up, the quote up or whatever. Most people allow themselves to get interrupted so often, they never get into the flow state. So you have to kind of learn how to isolate yourself, right? So after a couple weeks, you can look at your tasks and then combine it with this concept that I was written up in Inc. magazine years and years ago about this, 2014, I think, 2013, called the golden hour, okay? You should know your golden hours in which hey, these are certain times of the day that I feel really good doing these certain tasks. Right. So, Jason, artsy, creative stuff at night, right? Don't try and get me to do it at 10 a.m. Don't try to get me to copyright a letter at 10 a.m. or a VSL or something like that. I'm not going to do that great of a job, right? But after 7 o'clock, I'm great. You want me to do grindy work that moves the ball down the field in a project management sense? 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. My day's mostly done by 11 a.m., except for client meetings, stuff like that, right? And so knowing that, I could say, I only want to take client calls on Tuesdays or something, or Tuesday mornings or something. You're allowed to do that, especially if you're a founder. Sure. This is the freedom that we're talking about, right? It's not, I want to go to Aruba all the time, or so you can, great if you want, but this is the freedom, the time freedom of saying, no, I'm not going to take a sales call on Thursday night because that's supposed to be date night, damn it. And so organize your calendar with slots that fit your energy style. And that way you'd be like, yeah, man, I like doing this at this time. And so I think a lot of people organize their life, their finances, stuff like that, that they have to achieve 100% of the goal in order to win. And so to pay their bills, they need to do 100% of the revenue generation every month. And you've set yourself up to lose, my friend, if that's the case. You need to set it up so that 50%, 25% of the target makes you a winner, okay? You can rig the game to be like this with these energy pockets and how you organize your calendar, okay? So if you combine understanding your golden hours, your calendar, batching your tasks, that's going to take care of most of the stuff, okay? Then if you apply the Paul Rokins, Peter Drucker stuff that we've been talking about strategic quitting and understanding, like, I don't need to do all of this stuff and I'm going to just focus on the stuff that moves the needle, that really impacts my career, my results, how people see me, that kind of thing. Wow, are you going to get somewhere, right? And I'm sure there's one or two things that I missed in the book. You can grab it off Kindle. Yeah.
No, man, I love all of that because I like this. So I've got two of these little things right here. And so I talked to one of them all day, right? In terms of the Siri chick, and always add this to the calendar. Give me a reminder. Send this note to this person, and I wake up like I still have a lot of the military, perspective around how I approach my day, right? So, yes, there's an alarm that's set for 4:45, but most mornings I'm awake. And I'm handling all of the administrative things that I need to take care of from 5:30 to 7:30, right? And from 7:30, I get up, I go to the gym. I'm at the gym from 10, and then at 11 a.m. after I come home, had a little bite to eat, that's when I let the world in, right? But I'm so productive before 11 a.m. Get so much done to where now the remainder of the day allows me, like you said, to just be this, right? Because I tell people all the time, I had to, like I said, create a business that works best with, my gifts, my talents, my lifestyle, because I had to understand, who I am as a founder, and what business, like you said, what business am I really in? And I tell people all the time, I'm in the presentation business, right? Like I'm in the presenting to people, like you said, the best value that my company brings. That's why I do the podcast, because again, being on camera, being able to communicate, it's a phenomenal thing for the company. And so I think when, as a founder, especially if you're out there listening, you have to start thinking like, where am I best suited, or where can the greatest version of me be used in my business? And not so much as like you're saying, like the goal is important, but let's focus on growth more so than just the goal, because if we're always focused on growth, we're always going to be, like you say, moving the needle or making sure we're taking care of the things that are going to drive revenue and things forward. So final two questions before we let you get out of here, man, because I want to like this one. The last two are going to be for me. These are literally just for me. So when people, you've written books, you have you've helped your clients. I mean, you've got and this is what as I was preparing for today's conversation, like as I was looking through all the different things, this guy's he's no cheat.
No.
But like when it's all said and done, right? When years from now, what do you want to be known for? Like you've done a lot, but what do you want to be known for?
Right. Yeah, I guess I'm in the truth business. Because I did a 4-part series with a PhD on operationalizing company culture. His name was Dr. Yan Song. This is complicated stuff. I didn't understand half of what he was talking about. I've had to listen to it multiple times, right? But building in that culture evolution into the daily activities of your people and that kind of thing. And like, that's exciting. That's exciting. I believe I'm a good negotiator in terms of fairness, and I would like to stop people from blowing each other up, hurting each other. Ultimately, I would like to be the guy. I would have made a great diplomat, right? The guy who's called on to be. Everybody knows what. I had this happen one time. I was working at like decades ago, right? I was working in a pizza place, and I had a nice convertible back then. I'd show up, people would be like, "You're doing something else." I'm like, "Yep." Not just delivering pizzas. It was like a night job, and the car broke down, and somebody else, I call him up and I'm like, "Hey, could you take my shift?" And he went in and he complained to a third person, like, I don't know if Jason's telling the truth or not. And this guy, Gabby, he told me later about this. He said, "No, if that guy said that, that's what happened." And I was like, yes. That's what I want, right? And this is many, many years ago, but like that kind of thing is what resonates with Jason, right? So yeah, I would like to know that fewer people died and more people had a chance to live. Like you think of horrible things like the Holocaust or something like that, right? Or what happened to nearly all of the Native Americans or people originally in Africa, right? They were just murdered by the colonial people, right? And like, damn, what if they had a chance to live? What kind of contribution? Like, gas masks were invented by a black guy. Yeah. Gas masks in World War I. They hid that. We don't want people knowing that, like, okay, but what opportunity would these millions of people who have died have the chance to contribute to society? Of course, not all of them, most of them are going to do nothing, but there's going to be a few standouts who invent something, create something, entertain us with something, right, that otherwise would not exist. And having the opportunity to shepherd something like that into the world by going, no, you guys aren't going to smite right now, right? That would be ultimately, when I'm retired, something I could look back on. Sure. Unlike most people, I know exactly what I would do if I never needed to make money ever again.
What would you do?
I would paint. I would make music, and like with a digital workstation. Yeah. I've already created some pretty cool stuff with Suno, which is a neat app. And I would write
Nice.
Novels, and like to be like a science fiction or a fantasy series author of something beloved by a fan base, right? That's good enough for me, right? I think as a retiree. And I'd like to get to know more about the world, because I don't think it's what we're told it is. It's a lot more interesting out there.
I agree.
And we've spent a lot of time in computer land, right, like this. This is really not real, right? This is different from me being in your podcast studio or virtual, something like that, right? Yeah.
Virtual, yeah.
And so there's kind of a duplicate of the world here.
Yeah. I'm with you.
So yeah, what's your other question?
And it's so I'm gonna just forego the final question because I just gonna
okay.
This just really quick, man. And we're gonna wrap up here in a second, but having lived in multiple countries, traveled to countries, and you even brought up a lot of the atrocities that have happened, across the centuries. I think a lot of times, man, because of our worldview, that is what keeps us kind of stuck, and it doesn't allow our business to expand. Like for me to have a 10 billion, a mission to transform 10 billion lives and operate in every country across the world. Like I had to literally start to take a look back and say, you know what? It's okay for you to have a freelancer that lives in Pakistan, in Egypt, or in the Philippines, because that's the culture, right? Like you're going to be an international company, then you need to start your foundation from there, right? And so I think a lot of times, we lose sight of the importance of being able to, kind of look at our worlds. As you said, they're parallel. There's different ends of each of the spectrum of everything. But sometimes we become so Americanized, or
right.
I guess to say that we don't realize that, hey, man, there's a huge world out there. There's so much for us to explore. It truly is our oyster, or it truly is our canvas in the case of someone like yourself. Right. So I just want to kind of share that a little bit.
If you will, thank you.
For me, Jason, let people know. You've shared a lot of your ways for people to go get resources. I'm super grateful for all of that. Specifically, if you want someone to reach out to you, say good word. Share that with me.
Sure. Yeah, so go to jasonkanigan.com, which is my name.com. That will lead to everything else. It links to the shows, my blog at salestactics.org, the YouTube channel with the Cold Start Project, first year presidents. Probably need to update that link. But it's got its own website, and you can go to that show from there. Anybody wanting a quick course that I made about if you're starting a business or a business unit and you want to find out, what do I have to do? How much do I have to sell? What velocity do I have to work at in order to make a certain amount of money within a certain amount of time? I've got a course that I'll just give you for free that I made about that. And it'll show you like what price level to offer at. And like most of the time people are just picking this number out of the air. We're going, what are Jay and Jason charging? Oh, well, I'm not as good as them, so I'll charge like 80% of that, that kind of thing. And it's I show you the truth about how to do this in a way that, again, makes it so that you win, not, I gotta exhaust myself and work all the hours of the month and then maybe I can pay my rent. No, I want you winning, last month, if possible, and coming into this month with everything paid off, and you're like, now I can just grow. Yeah, very, very different mentality.
I love it. No, man, it's a shift in identity that I think is necessary.
Mhm.
And when that type of clarity around our numbers and things like that, once we have that, that's a huge shift in our identity.
Yep.
So thanks for sharing.
You bet. Thank you, Jay. And folks, if you're watching, listening, leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe. Jay deserves it. He runs a good show. It's not easy to do, having done it myself for many years. So I appreciate it.
I appreciate it, man. Okay, I appreciate it. Hey, folks. All right, look, that's a wrap on today's episode of the Disruptive Leadership Podcast. I know you got value out of it, right? So like Jason said, like, heart, share, subscribe, depending on where you're watching this from. But I can guarantee you cannot return to life or business and just go back to the status quo, right? You got to do something with what it's got, because knowledge is cheap, but execution is everything. All right. So connect with Jason. If he sparked an idea that challenged the way that you think about business, leadership, operations, go ahead and take action now. Reach out to him, connect with him, find the things that he shared, during today's conversation. But if you're serious about eliminating like the hidden inefficiencies, breaking cycles within your own business, let's have a conversation and book a catalyst system assessment. We're going to leave the link down in the description or in the comments. So remember, whoever creates the best system to maximize results win. All right. And until next time, make your next move your best move and stay disruptive. I'll talk to you guys soon. Peace.